What's the biggest misconception you hear about AI and customer success? And what's the reality?
That it's a big undertaking. It's a massive undertaking. I go back to that start small. You can leverage AI to do some very basic things that will bring huge value.
Welcome to The Ticket, the podcast where we uncover the future of customer service and customer experience with Intercom. I'm Bobby Stapleton, Senior Director of Customer Support here at Intercom. Today, we're diving into the world of customer success with an industry leader who has revolutionized how businesses deliver value to their customers. Our guest is John Durocher, Chief Customer Officer at Calix. John leads an award-winning customer success organization, ensuring exceptional experiences for Calix customers, many of whom are rural broadband providers that rely on his team to help their businesses thrive. John, welcome to the show. So glad to have you here.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be on the show.
Can you start by explaining what is being a Chief Customer Officer at Calix? Give us a little bit of what is your day-to-day and what are some of the things that you focus on?
Yeah, first, our core mission is pretty basic, as it wouldn't be a surprise given the title. It's ensuring our customers and their subscribers have success, right? We don't just sell broadband hardware and software. We're really focused on empowering them to transform their businesses and deliver a customer experience, which is a little bit different, right? And so in my job day to day, customer experience isn't just my department. It's a mindset in our organization that we have to embed in everything that we do. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm helping, make sure that that's front and center in our culture, but you can't be a good chief customer officer without engaging with customers. So a lot of what I do is meeting with our customers every day, hearing what they have to say about our products and services and how we're helping them, and then focusing on improving our experience. Customer experience is not a destination, it's a journey, and you're continuously looking for ways to improve it.
I just want to ask one quick follow-up there. How do you decide between using these anecdotes from these one-on-one customer interactions versus, I'm sure, the many, many different data points and touch points that you get across all the systems? I imagine it's a blend of both, but how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think it's we're looking for themes, right? We're really looking for something that we're hearing from a number of customers, and so that we're really addressing something that's going to, satisfy the most number of customers and impact the most number of customers. And there may be something that customers say, I say, that is a great idea. But, that's probably going to be 2 or 3 things that we do after these things, right? And so I think that's an important thing is listening but also being upfront with your customers about things that, just aren't in the straight and narrow of what we really want to focus on. And I think that's every bit is building a relationship with them.
Awesome. That's really great advice. So you've worked in many customer-focused roles across a range of diverse industries, from financial services at Accenture to tech at Salesforce and now at Calix. What are the biggest lessons you've learned when it comes to providing a great customer experience?
Yeah, I think the first thing is it comes down to trust, right? Customers just don't buy your products and services, but they buy confidence in your ability to deliver that. I think that, they trusted you when they bought your product, that you're going to stand behind it, that you're going to make them successful. I think that trust is in my mind, number one. Number two is simplicity wins, right? It's making sure that experience is simple. Nobody wants a complicated experience. They want it to be simple and easy. And then I think it's the small details. We spend a lot of time talking about small things that you can do that can really make that experience magical. And I was giving someone an example just in my own personal life. I'm having some chimney work done. I live in Boston, so I have a very old house. And the gentleman who was coming to give me an estimate came to the door, and the first thing he did was stop and put on the blue booties.
Oh,
When he came
nice.
to my house. Now look, it was a beautiful day. It was dry out, but it showed to me that he had respect for my house. Right, he was going to come into it, but he's paying attention to those little details. And it gave me, back to that first thing, it gave me confidence that this guy, if he's paying attention to that little detail, then he'll take care of the details around the actual chimney work that he's doing. So I think it's simplicity, but pay attention to those small things. They can really create either a magical moment or a trusting moment.
What I love about those three things is regardless of what size of company you're at or the size of your support team, those are three values that I feel like apply to all customer service. So that's really helpful. And so let's talk a little bit on the AI side of things. So AI is transforming many aspects of customer service and success. So, how is Calix leveraging AI to enhance customer experiences? And where do you see the biggest opportunity for AI driven innovation?
Well, I think AI is, first of all, if you're not using it in everyday life, you're not taking advantage of something that's going to drive your productivity, make you smarter. So I think, we're looking first for opportunities is there's so much data that we have that any one person couldn't go through it. So how do we go and mine the existing data about our customers, about the experiences they're having, and put that in the hands of the people who are interacting with our customers? Whether that be our agents who are answering the phone, or whether it's our success guides out in the field, or even our sales team. So we're looking for ways of pulling this data, turning it in insight, and putting it in their hands. So that's number one. I think really empowering our front line around that. Like here's a little thing that we're taking advantage of. When you go to do the call note summary of the conversation, populating that in a really concise way so somebody can go back, right, and look at that. And pre-populating, when you get a case and you're not maybe closing that case out, but there's like, here's what I heard back to the customer so they can follow that. And AI doing that for you versus somebody having to go think about that, it's faster. Now I can go in and I can edit I like this part. No, AI, you didn't really understand this. I'm going to change this. Again, it's just making it easy.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things we think a lot about is like where to incorporate AI in a way that's actually going to add value to whether it's on the customer side or on the teammate side, and not just like, hey, this seems like cool AI sprinkles that looks good on a marketing website, but actually is meaningless once you're doing it in practice. So we're trying to find that balance. And like, how have you gone about thinking about that to make sure that, hey, where you're adding this, it actually is a big opportunity and actually is adding meaningful value?
Yeah, I mean, we've taken this crawl, walk, run. Like some of the things that I think you hear in AI are definitely running, and you really need to go through that. And what we're looking for is in any customer experience, you're looking for friction points. You're looking for things that take longer than they should. And so we've actually went and documented a whole bunch of use cases by department, by area. I've asked each of my groups to do and saying, let's think about where this could, help us be more effective, be more clear with our customers, provide maybe self-service to our customers. And so we've created this spreadsheet of ideas. And then we're looking across and like, okay, how many would help us cross departmental, right? Because you think about experience, I think one of the things that we find is that experience get really well defined within a silo, optimized within the silo, but then the experience has these gaps, if you will, if you cross departments. And we're trying to think, is AI something that will help us actually create a more integrated end to end? At our sales kickoff this year, I got on the stage and said, people always talk about this handoff. We have this great handoff with our success team, right? Or they're an extension. I said, both. I don't like either of those terms. Pre and post sales are things that organizations have, but that's not a customer experience. The customer experience has one relationship. It's with your company, right? It's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
badge you wear, not the department you own. And I told him, I said, if you watched the Olympics last summer, we had the world's best relay team, fastest runners, 1 through 4. And guess what happened? The handoff was dropped or they didn't win the gold. So handoffs are just a recipe for problems. And so we're thinking about AI. How does it close the gap till we eliminate handoffs and we create a more integrated experience?
I kind of want to stay on this topic there of like the silos. You know, you've recently spoken about breaking down silos within an organization in order to create that unified customer experience. I love that handoff analogy. Like, what are some of the other ways you go about trying to tactically make sure that's a seamless experience and breaking down those silos?
Well, part of it is just this orthodoxy that exists within organizations, right? I'm in, the success team. I'm in the sales team. And people identify with that team. And I said, first of all, let's identify with the customer and the objectives of the customer, because if we get aligned with that, there's less gaps between us. I think that's, a mindset that we have to have. And I've eliminated, I said, please do not ever say pre and post sales. Right. And I think doing that, what you do is you say, well, my team possibly can't be involved in pre sales. I'm like, why? I would say, I bet if we invested more time in pre sales when we got, when the customer bought, we would go faster in terms of driving their success. And isn't that really what we want? We want them to be successful because that their success translates to our success. So we've taken some of these barriers or orthodoxies away. And then we look for, when we look at that whole experience, we're kind of examining department and seeing, okay, we know that that's a good place to look is the department handoff and see if we can just eliminate those.
Mm. And do you run the risk of people like I'm keeping the analogy going. Like, do you run the risk of people tripping over each other a bit? Or in your view, is that a risk you're willing to tolerate because the outcome will just end up being a better customer experience overall?
Yeah. Well, I think it forces I think that these roles and responsibilities are already there with a chance of like stepping on each other. And what we're doing is you're really putting a spotlight on it and saying, instead of that being something that's organically grown up and people just step in, let's go and define that. Because there's plenty of salespeople that will do success activities, which is not a problem. I think it's an opportunity. But if you're going to do it, we'd like you to do it this way, right? And have more consistency in terms of that experience. So I think it focuses us on that. It helps us to define roles and responsibility that maybe have more clarity about taking on some responsibilities, meaning from a success team that you're in the sales cycle. And there's probably a role that you contributed that's broader than just success, right? And just like the sales team will take on some responsibilities that are broader. But the end result is customers are impressed with that. And they're more likely, or prospects are impressed with that, more likely to become a customer.
And I would say the same too for any support teams, right? Like we don't have to only come in, like you said, post sales. I think that can actually be that can be such a differentiator and not only showing, hey, if I do have like a technical question, product question, I met Bobby who's on the support team. But again,
Right.
like you said, seeing that unified experience too, it's kind of like a win-win during that pre-sales phase. So I like that.
Totally agree with that. And look, it's not how things are normally run because people like to stay in their swim lanes. They like to be able to control that. But as a chief customer officer, I'm kind of illuminating, let's create that experience, right? Let's really, really dig in and spend time on that. I think the bigger problem that I've seen is we have such an ethos in the company about driving success that everybody jumps in from time to time, and that can, bring its own problems where everybody's trying to help, but you really need one leader. And so back to that clarification of roles and responsibility, and there's things where we've tried to do this historically. I've been here 2 years in the past where everybody's diving in, but there's no, what I would say is integrated plan.
Gotcha.
And we would never be able to solve it because every department was trying to solve what they saw as the one problem, but that wasn't going to do it. When we actually got together, looked at the problem in its totality, and then assigned responsibilities out and managed, much better experience.
Switching gears here, customer advisory boards play a big role at Calix. Can you share how they've influenced your customer service strategy and also how they've influenced product development?
Oh, absolutely. We have multiple product advisory boards. Let me do the structure for you, maybe to start with. We have our GM, so that's a leadership advisory board, right? And so we're sharing strategic direction. And then we have persona based advisory boards. So if you're the marketing head or your strategy and operations, because recognizing that each group will have their own point of view and their own pain points that they're trying to solve. And then I actually started a customer success advisory board this year, which is I want to go out and test ideas of things that I think are problems or opportunities and saying, if I created something to help you more here, would that be of value? Right? Really listening to that. And look, it's a big responsibility or big ask, I should say, for our customers to join this board. And I'll share a funny anecdote with you. As we were preparing to invite people to our success advisory board, we said, how do we make this fun? Right? We want to really connect with people. And we said, okay, well, why don't we send them a box of donuts? And then in the box, we would have this invitation that said we had this whole pun, right, about the donut. So we know you do not sit on any advisory boards yet, but we'd be glazed to have you join us, right? Imagine warm coffee, delightful chats, and a sprinkle of humor. Why not take a bite out of this opportunity, right? So really getting their attention and recognizing that we want you to join, but we want to make sure that you understand we'll have fun, right? And we'll make it enjoyable for you to be on it. And of course, everybody opened that box of donuts, and we had really good success rate in terms of participation. And my favorite response was one of my customers came back with their own pun, which was hilarious,
Did
right?
they send you donuts or
No, no, but they came back with a really punny answer, right? And it said, do not worry about a thing. I'm just sprinkled with joy to be asked. I would have been a bit jelly if I had not been invited. And, and we're new to the world of Calix, but as we go through this adolescence, I'm like, it was just fabulous. And, it's building that rapport. And again, it's a small thing, but it kind of sets the tone for how we'll interact with each other in this advisory board.
Yeah, and I can only imagine, just like that, like you said, the that humor, the fun adds back to that feeling of trust. And so when you are sitting there pitching ideas, like you said, you can have some fun with it too, but also you're going to get an honest answer because you've kind of put yourself out there to be a little silly and vulnerable. And yeah, I'm sure that I would have loved that. So.
We had fun with it. We had fun with it. We really wanted to connect with our customers, like you said.
So, how do you approach integrating customer feedback into actionable improvements without overwhelming your customers? I think it can, especially if there's a bunch of surveys coming from all these different departments. How do you make sure that, yeah, you're getting some actionable improvements without overwhelming them?
Yeah, we do an annual NPS survey to see, where we stand, and then what's driving that. We ask some very specific questions based on, kind of how they're answering. So first it's capturing, where should we focus our time so we don't, like you said, over survey. And then how do we take this, you know, area that we think we need some work on back to our advisory boards, right? And it's all about testing and learning, testing and learning. We have a hypothesis about what we could do, but we don't just assume that we should just go do this, right? We actually are very intentional about sharing that with different segments of our customer to say, is this something that is meeting the mark? And then we'll actually test out some of the things that we're doing, right? Whether that's from a product perspective or from a process perspective. We do a lot of support outside of the product. I'll give you an example. We've been helping customers in the area of business insights. They have lots of data, and these are, small providers. They don't necessarily have a set of data science people on their team. So we actually have a small data science team, and we said, look, we're going to target this in particular areas. How does this resonate with you? And so we've been testing some new areas that we may go and explore. And we always check with, as I said, different segments of the customer base and saying, is that something you would value? Because again, customer success comes along with our products. There's not an additional charge for it. So we want to make sure that the things that we can do as part of that offer are highly impactful for them.
I love that idea of testing and learning, but also not making assumptions about what you should jump and do. Again, how do you find the balance between, again, asking the surveys, but not too many, getting some signal from some customers, whether it's the advisory board or outside of that, and then using that to go decide what to test and learn.
Right. Well, we have these great forums, right? We have, as I said, we have the advisory boards. I'm also an exec sponsor. So what that means, I have 10 customers that I I meet on a quarterly basis at a minimum to hear from them to see how are things going. So I have these sounding boards, and then if we feel like there's a topic that we need to kind of drill down is, we may assemble a group of customers just to get feedback about that, who've had, like, let's say, the signal is this segment has been having this problem. Okay, but then we'll go out and say, hey, will you sit with us and give us some feedback about how we're going to make that better? Again, so it's more targeted than just random surveys out, because that's not the best way. The other thing is we have a world-class community. And so if you go to our community, that isn't Calix and our customers, that's a portion of it, but it's actually Calix customers meeting and talking about problems they're having and helping each other. So we're there actually observing what are they looking for help with. And that's another good group that we can go out. So I feel like we have these different sounding boards that doesn't put the burden on a survey process, but it's something that's built in already, right? So I'm not the only executive sponsor. Of course, we have others. So if we have an idea, we'll say, okay, go out and test this with your customers. Go and have, when you're having this conversation, it would be, apropos to bring it up. And so that's how we try and handle it in the existing forums that we have.
That's awesome. Really helpful advice.
But I would say that they're a good cross section of our customers, right? Like I said, they're the persona base, they're the segments. We have a lot of different places to go look and get that feedback. And then, make determination about, okay, what it is we'll focus on.
Yeah, and I like taking all those inputs, synthesizing them, whether that's from like a data standpoint or the gut intuition that I'm sure you can just see from having all those touch points is a great and easy way. And again, something all support leaders, success leaders can go and do. I think it can sometimes seem scary to be like, well, I'm just going to reach out to these customers, but it's like, no, like they probably want to hear from you, especially if you show up with donuts, but like they want to hear from you and like want to help that experience too.
It seems obvious to me, but that's part of our culture. I mean, our customers kind of expect that. They're used to us reaching out and interacting around that. And I think they really like it because we do one thing that's really important. We go and listen. We actually close the loop, right? Because sometimes the surveys, they put a lot of information in and you never, if you're the other end of that survey, whatever happened to that? Did anything happen? Right? Because you love to be asked, but if you're continually asked and you never see progress, I think that's the most disheartening aspect, right? And I think I started off talking about that is we're pretty upfront with things that we're going to do, things that we'd like to do, and things that we're not going to do.
And you are that third category is also very important.
It's super important because if I keep telling you this thing and you don't do it, I feel like, are you listening to me? Like, just tell me yes or no. I may not like the answer, but then I definitively know that you heard me.
Yeah, that's really smart. So, what are the most critical components of delivering an optimal customer experience, and especially through the lens of a business to business to consumer environment like Calix's?
Yeah, I think, one, it's challenging our customers to think about their experience they're creating and make it super easy. Like we do some secret shopping, if you will, and go and see and figure out what that experience is going to be like as a subscriber, and then helping our customers then to deliver what would be world class, right? Either it could be that secret that shopping experience, or it could be just us reviewing their end-to-end experience and looking for opportunities or benchmarks or best practices from other places. And then it's like, how do you make it seamless and then personalized? I think that's the other aspect, right? That people want, recognizing the demographic of your customer, of the actual end customer, right? Because you think about the end customers, we have this debate a lot about an older population. Would they do a self-install? Would they want to interact with the technology? Do they want to go online, or do they want to actually, talk to someone live or go face to face? And I think you have to figure out what that demographic looks like. But I would also challenge that aspect. And this is one I said, you know, my dad is 95 years old. And if you said, hey, would he be able to do a self install if you sent him new technology to swap out? Well, of course he wouldn't be able to, but he has the world's greatest IT department. Me. Bingo. I think a lot of folks forget that, that demographic is often supported by other people. And, that person, like, I would prefer, if I was going to support my dad, to them just send it to me and let me just do it versus helping my dad schedule and, letting somebody in the house. So I think those are the things that you need to really consider. And the only way you can get an answer on that is if you ask the question. Like, I think sometimes we make assumptions about what the demographic would do. I go back to that test and learn.
Yeah. And also what I'm hearing from you there is this idea of like, don't get too hung up just like on that first, like, don't get too hung up on that, what's right in front of you for the customer experience. Like, be willing to take the time to like explore and investigate and thinking about that long-term impact because like you said, it's not just about like what does this business wants, but what their customers might want. And again, that's good advice for all support teams out there. It's like, hey, don't just think about that one person who might be reaching out to your support or success team. Sit there and like think about who they may also be working with, who they might also be serving, and if based on those assumptions, how might your strategy or your offering might change. So that's yeah, that's really great advice.
I think a lot of us, we all make this mistake from time to time. When we think about the customer, we put ourselves as a customer. And we make this blanket assumption that we are the perfect customer and that whatever we like or don't like would represent all customers, right? And we
Of course, my tastes are the world's tastes. Right?
yeah, and I think that's a big mistake because we're all at different stages of our lives, right? So let's say I'm a new person in the call center, just out of college. I've got my loans to pay back, and so I'm very cost conscious at this part of my life. And so I would be making decisions that are really cost driven, not experience driven. And other people are at a point in their life and they're all about the experience, right? And they're willing to pay a premium for the experience. And I think if we make that decision for them based on our personal situation, we're making a mistake. And actually we're projecting on them. And I think when you project, you make mistakes, or you make assumptions, and it's not always fitting. Whereas you actually should listen to what the customer really is. What are their buying behavior? What matters to them? What problem are they trying to solve? Versus just assume that you're the expert, and you are the expert, but don't apply your personal situation to that expertise.
Well, looking ahead, what trends or innovations do you believe will redefine customer success?
I think that the world of customer success in particular started out like, look, I started doing this 20 plus years ago at Salesforce. It was focused on driving adoption and renewal of the platform, right? Of the individual clouds that we were supporting. And it was very focused on, let me make sure you know how to use this feature, this function. I think what's happened today is that as our, platforms and our applications get more and more intuitive and more proactive, meaning, guiding you, the help that we would provide is going to change dramatically because I shouldn't have to do that, right? It should be proposing to you the next best actions. It should proposing how you could get more value or drive more, a deeper, broader experience with your customer. So if I'm doing that through technology, what does success look like? Well, I think success then starts to think about business capability, things we talked about, defining the customer experience. How do I drive more efficiency within your operation, which is outside of the technology itself? And it's really looking at your employees. I would say one of the things is that in order to deliver an exceptional customer experience, you have to deliver an exceptional employee experience,
Very true.
right? And so thinking about that, it's a really different focus area, but the result is the same, right? You're doing things that will drive a superior customer experience. And so I think, I'm seeing this happening today in our team where I'm really pushing my team to get into areas that are helping, the teams make sure that if you're going from a network provider and you've done that for 50 years and now you're going to become an experienced provider, how does that affect your organization from a skills, experience, background, training that's required? Has less to do with the application and more to do with, delivering the experience. So I think customer success is going to become more and more focused on that customer experience capability area than just adoption of your product.
Do you think that same lens will apply just with the growing use of AI? Like, do you think the focus will continue to then be the experience because you have AI for answering the onboarding or answering the product questions?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to go to the bigger picture. I think it'll allow us to deliver that because if you think about it, where are most people spending all of their energy? It's with the technology. It's like it's with what's right in front of you. What's harder to do is pull back, right? And a lot of organizations don't have chief customer officers or customer experience officers. And I think this is where the future will be. Somebody really taking responsibility in a cross-department way of trying to help manage that. And I think that's where we could lend a lot of help.
Again, I've said it earlier, but yeah, again, just great advice for any support leader, success person listening in to be able to take that nugget and be like, okay, where can I again reach across the swim lane and bring that together. Awesome. Well, John, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate the time.
Bobby, thanks for having me on the show.
Just before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at inter.com/newsletter to stay up to date with the latest trends in customer service and support. You'll find all the links in the episode description. Thanks again for joining us, and see you next time on The Ticket.